Dear friend, let's discover more of who we are together. Love, Haley and Amanda.
And we're back, dear friends.
It's Haley and Amanda, your hosts.
We never say our names.
I know.
I just realized that.
We were trying to be more intentional about that at the end of the episodes, but it's hard to remember to say your own name.
Well, because, I don't know if y'all know this, but Haley and I do music and we have a band, but anytime we play just as a duo, every time we intro before we sing, we say,
I'm Haley.
I'm Amanda. And we're Haley and Amanda. And it's like something we've done for years. And if you're not seeing us on YouTube right now and you're listening on one of the many streaming services, I have heard from listeners that they think our voices are similar, which is interesting to me because I think they are not.
I think they are not also.
But
I think when we sing together,
they blend well.
Yes.
But
we sound different.
But right now, the person who's talking, this is Amanda.
And this person that's talking is Haley.
And
but
so
when we talk together,
do you know who's
who? Okay.
I thought we were going to say the same thing. Okay. Anyways, welcome back. Today we are talking about reframing the negative bias. Yep, we're going there. We're talking about negative bias, but it's going to be positive.
It is.
We're going to reframe it.
We need to do our pledge.
Okay, yeah. Before we jump into
As I was about to get on knee deep.
Really? You're just about to jump in there.
Yeah.
Well, let's not, and let's do our pledge. If you don't know the pledge,
now you know.
Shouldn't learn it because it's nonsense and we just do it for fun. Okay? Ready?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United Mates in America, and rarely in public is where we stand. One friendship, under God, indivisible, live purty, you heard?
And just us for all. And today it is Just Us For All, talking about a topic that we've been talking about together on our runs daily, and it gives us the runs when we talk.
Amanda?
I just wanted to.
But we talk about, we talk and talk and talk. That's all this podcast is.
We talk and talk and talk. Thank God we have a podcast.
Our quote behind our podcast, the why behind it, is from Young Pueblo.
And guys,
it's about conversation.
We love this poem, but also I love this book, and it's Young Pueblo's book, Clarity and Connection. Look, if you're on YouTube,
go get it. It's beautiful.
Clarity and Connection. So the poem that we try to make sure we stay aligned to in every episode says, an honest and deep conversation with a dear friend is sometimes the exact nourishment you need to regain clarity, get back up, face the world, and resume your mission with a new and focused energy.
Yeah, and sometimes we get in our heads and we think, man, what we're talking about is not profound, But sometimes it doesn't matter if it is some
new idea.
Like you just need to have good conversation with people that you care about, and it changes you.
100%. Everything we talk about on this podcast and everything you and I talk about, it has been said before, it has been thought before, but sometimes we need reminders, we need nudges, we need the inspiration behind the thoughts and ideas behind those conversations to realign us to go back out into the world with clarity.
Yes.
And that it's sometimes, for me, when I listen to podcasts that inspire me, it's not that I'm getting new information. It's like, oh yeah, I need to remember that.
Yeah, and it's just little nudges. Yeah. And that's true. Like today we're talking about reframing the negative and reframing restriction. You've heard this before. Mm-hmm. Like how to change your mind off of negative and try to be more positive.
And and reframing can be difficult because if you don't get the picture perfectly center,
you have to buy a new
look
frame.
Crooked. Yeah. So we're just saying
that is a long process.
Yeah, we're just saying we're going to reframe the negative and focus more on the positive, and we're going to tell you why and how to do that. And we actually found some incredible articles, research from Berkeley University was the major one that we're going to be pulling from. It's this whole article about negative bias, and
but this all came up because we were on one of our runs and
getting the runs,
and we were talking because I've been, especially, and her too actually, we've been trying to be a little bit more intentional about what we're putting in our bodies.
Very thoughtful about food specifically.
Yeah, and it's like a time right now where we're being a little bit more strict, than we typically would be because
we like to celebrate.
Yeah,
and
everything
so
feels like a celebration.
Serious. Like Tuesday feels like a celebration.
Yeah.
And so we're like, it's Tuesday. Let's go have great dinner together out and get drinks.
Yeah.
And that's cool. And
last minute, some of our girlfriends came over to the house.
We went banana nut bread. And that's okay. And we ate banana nut bread. No, we didn't. But it's like, we just like to celebrate. And so it was kind of like us making a decision, like, let's kind of get our footing again on like eating some really good whole foods that make us feel good.
But still able to celebrate and enjoy the social things that bring you joy. So we were on our walk, on our run, and she was kind of asking me, Amanda was asking Haley.
Yeah, if you don't know who's talking.
How's it going for you? Because
like,
I know we've cut out a lot of things that we really like. Mm-hmm. And I was telling her it's been kind of strange that it hasn't been as hard because for some reason making the list of things you can have instead of making a list of things you can't have, it kind of like changed my brain.
No, for real.
And so Williams.
Pharrell Williams. But because I just want to say that when we were talking about things that we like wanted to eat, we got really excited and creative about cooking really delicious foods around these ingredients. And so all week we were making, like I would make something and I'd be like, Haley, this is so good. You got to go get the ingredients to make it. And then it was just kind of like we were focusing on the things that we could have, and it made the week feel like not restrictive.
And that is just a slight brain trick.
Baby trick.
Yeah. Focusing on what you could have and celebrating it made us not upset about the things we couldn't have. And usually I am like a big baby. You tell me one thing you can't have, especially
with you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're like, cut alcohol for 2 weeks, I'm like, what else could I even drink?
Dryuary. Can it be dampuary?
Seriously.
I'm serious.
So someone being like, hey, for the next 2 weeks, I want you to have water, Topo Chico, any sparkling water, maybe a glass of wine,
tons of vegetables, tons of fish, tons of,
Yeah, try this new leafy green you've never had. Have you ever tried this vegetable? How about that? Like, then it's just a total change.
Well, and so in this article from Berkeley University, and it's all about negative bias, one of the quotes, it said, we naturally give more weight, like biologically as human beings, we naturally give more weight to things that are so wrong than to things that go right.
Yes.
So when we give more weight to things that go wrong and are wrong, we do that naturally. Like it's our instinct to have negative bias. Like we give more weight to those things instead of the things that are going right for us.
And the same, there's another quote that says that we overreact to negative things way more than we overreact. I may be jumping ahead.
You are, but it's okay. It's the same idea that like we just, when we are created to naturally put emphasis on negative and have negative bias because it's actually an instinct that helps keep us alive.
Right.
It means we're looking out for danger. We're looking out for things that can harm us. It is just evolutionary, like truth. Like we have negative bias as humans. It's not you're a negative person.
Right.
It is natural to have that bias. So the thing is that we are intelligent beings, and unlike other creation and other creatures, we have the ability to have rational thinking, and we can take over the wheel of our mind. And I just watched this TED Talk, actually. It was about procrastination. It was by this guy, Tim Urban.
Uh-oh.
Loved it.
How long did you wait to watch it?
Procrastinated for years before I watched it. It has like 47 million views. It's like a very popular TED Talk.
So just under the amount of our podcast views.
Yeah, it's very similar to what we're producing here. Yeah.
Cool.
So he is talking about procrastination, and he talks about how our brains, we're all procrastinators, and that our brains are way more advanced than other creatures, and we do have this rational thinking ability, but we also have this instant gratification. He calls it the instant gratification monkey. And it's a thing that's like, let's do the things that feel good right now. Like, let's take over. Like, let's kick rational thinking out of the steering wheel. Like, let me take over. And it's like, because even the article was like, the easier thing is usually the bad thing for you, like, because it's path of least resistance.
OMG.
But then the hard thing is usually like the good thing for you. And we talk about this all the time. Like, it's so hard to stay aware when you want to do the easy thing because of, I mean, it is laziness, but also, like I said, path of least resistance. Like, we're always trying to find shortcuts, but that ends up being like probably the worst choice because it's like, it's not going to be the good thing. The good thing is usually the hard thing. And making yourself choose the hard thing is when we start to procrastinate.
And it's usually like a positive good thing being the hard thing is usually because it's going to take like, it's a little bit of progress you see at a time. You know, like, I got to do this thing like
it's
a lot of times over time. And so that's why it's harder. It's a lot of little things that add up, a lot of them. Whereas we focus and over hyperbolize this one negative thing.
Yes. And one other thing I want to say about the TED Talk that he said that I really thought was interesting was he was saying that when it comes to deadlines, like if you have a deadline, usually even if you procrastinate up to the day or days before, you're going to get it done because like panic sets in, right? And you will finish the deadline, right? But he said there's another type of procrastination where there is no deadline and it's just your life and in your relationships, and people stay in situations and remain unhappy and dissatisfied because there's no deadline. So panic never sets in. So our procrastination leads us through life in this never-ending process of instant gratification overriding rational thinking. So then he makes this image, and it's a box for each week of a 90-year life, and it's small. It's not a lot of boxes, how many weeks a 90-year life has. And then he starts checking off how many we've already lived if you're at certain ages. And it's like, oh, you don't think you have deadlines. Your life's a deadline, folks. Like, you've got to learn how to override the instant gratification and let the rational take over. And it was just like, if you want to watch it, it's by Tim Urban. It's a TED Talk. It's a very good, he's really good with the imagery on it. Like, it's very visual, and it's kind of like a little bit of a shock. Like, you think you don't have a deadline to change the things you want to change, to do the things, like you're almost becoming a spectator in your own life because you don't even let yourself begin to chase your dreams because you're procrastinating even starting.
Yeah, and it's just that flip in your mind, that little reframe. You know, like choosing that negative, easy way out, focusing on like this instant gratification for this now moment instead of
bigger picture.
Yeah, and also
rational thinking.
Yeah, because even talking about like in a consumery way, like in our lives, it's the one thing we don't have and we can't have.
What we want.
Is the thing we want. And we're like, sorry.
No, yeah.
It's like, wah, I can't afford this landscaping I really want, or whatever. That's me
right
now. Yeah.
But it's also like we were talking about, like in parenting, this comes up. Like we were saying how I was saying my parents, something that they really tried to do with me and my sister after they had already raised 2 kids, like, you know, obviously you're sharpening your parenting tools, and sorry, my older siblings, but we got the better parents. And so they were saying that they really tried not to say no as much as possible and just redirect. So if like you're trying to take something away from a kid and they start to whine and be like kind of tantrumy. Like it's about redirecting that energy to something else that they can have instead of the thing that they cannot have and being like, no, don't act like that. Because usually a kid isn't trying to be terrible. They don't understand why the thing's being taken away from them. It's not out of rebellion most of the time. It's about it like unable to control emotions yet.
Yeah, and that redirecting is actually ingraining in your child. It's taking that negative out, that I don't want you to have this, and just saying, I want you to have this
thing. What about this thing? I want you to have this thing. And it changes the whole situation up. Instead of focusing on what the kid can't have, focus on what they can have. And it's the same for us. Like if we focus like on when we're diet, focusing on the foods we can have, it's a lot more interesting and fun to make the meals instead of focusing on the things that we cannot eat, because then those are the only things we want.
Right.
And it's that slight changing our negative bias to what we can have. And like you were saying, like we overact when we can't have negative things, just like a kid does. Like if we can't have the thing we want and someone's taking it away from us, there's a huge overreaction. And what society leans towards is focusing on what we didn't do. Instead, like if we go above and beyond at something, we hardly get recognized for that. Like if you're doing your job and you go above and beyond the call of duty, it's hardly recognized. But if you don't meet the standard,
you're penalized.
And you're like all the focus goes on what you did not accomplish.
And think about in that situation too, because they did a whole research experiment on it, and it was like the reaction to the not meeting standards was way worse than when somebody went above and beyond. And think about like how much you would hold a grudge, if somebody did something negative to you or didn't meet a standard. But then like if somebody does something nice for you,
you're like, oh, thanks.
Thanks so much. See you. Bye.
Move on. But if they do something bad, you're like, I'll never forget this.
Yeah, and the same in that same article, it was talking about in like relationships, if one of the partners, does something really terrible, you think, well, now I'll do one thing really nice to make up for it. And it's not like that. It's like you did one terrible thing, now you need to do 12 really nice things to make up for that one bad thing.
And it's actually like how we're hardwired, like we were saying, like we're definitely lean towards that negative. And something that they were talking about was in media, like media is so focused on like the negative that's going on in the world.
Mass media.
Yeah, like mass media is all about, the headlines are, usually about the stuff that's going wrong.
Yeah.
And they were saying that it's because we're all affected by what's happening if it's negative. Like because we're all afraid of the same things.
That's right.
Dying. Like we have the same fear. And so whenever there's mass media for the masses, they are going to focus on negative because it's universal, which is kind of like, that's kind of eye-opening to me.
It is. And they were kind of praising, because they were like, social media gets a bad rap, but social media is actually
trying to show the positive
like
hobbies
it's
and
us trying
curing.
to put out good news, like, or like maybe sharing to your little small bubble something, because maybe, all the positive things we don't share, but you'll share them with someone.
Yeah. Yeah. It was an interesting, like, to me, I loved the article because I also have mixed feelings about social media, but it's true. Like if you're consuming media, it's usually negative, but it feels like in social media, you are getting like more positive.
Yeah. And we were talking about when you do watch, because you do need to be aware of what's going on in the world. Obviously, we're all connected. We're on the same planet. We're sharing energy. But like that negative from mass media kind of like turning down the faucet a little. Yeah. Like instead of just like having it open all the time, just pouring out inside
Get
of
in my brain.
Just like maybe a trickle here and there.
This is a sacred space up here.
It is.
And we got to make sure like what we're putting in, because it's going to come out somehow.
Yes, it's going to go in your body and then come out somehow.
Somehow through action, through anxiety, through stress. And it's just like you got to be careful how much you're putting certain things in your brain and have a nice little guard up there for yourself.
And especially if we're trying to reframe our pattern of thinking.
Yeah. to be more positive.
Yeah, you're not doing yourself any favors by just overloading yourself with more negative stuff, because then when it comes time to make a decision or
They'll be out of fear.
Yeah, a thought process, like even us on this little diet, like if we've been surrounding ourselves with like positive things, we may take this new challenge and have a positive bias towards it. Whereas if we're like bogged down with negative stuff, we may be like, oh man, what's the one thing I can't have?
Yeah. Well, and I will say, like in marriage too, it's like if I focus on the things my husband is not doing
good.
Well, but it's true.
on.
It's like when I focus on the things he's not doing well or perfect for me, I start to really, like, my attitude is horrible. But the moments that I focus on what I love about this person and the good that he does do for us, I am in love. You know what I mean? Like my whole attitude towards him, everything shifts. And it's just, you have to be so intentional because we are leaning towards those negative feelings. Like it is our bias. And you have to be really intentional to look at the people around you and the situations around you and choose the other lens.
Yeah. And I was going to say, like, this is kind of a call to action part.
Yeah.
Like if we do lean towards this big negative bias, like let's try to shift it together. When someone does go the extra mile for you, praise them. Yeah. And don't forget about it. And then maybe return the favor and do it for someone else. Like keep it going. Why does the negative have to be the overreaction? Why can't we change it to be the positive way? And I think, again, just like the young Pueblo quote, this is where your dear friends come in to help us stay sharp.
Yeah.
Because I know, well, and all of us, whether you consider yourself a real negative person or not, we can all sink into some sort of negativity. And then you start, like a lens, like you're saying, it starts coming out of you in all different ways. And David White, in his friendship essay in Consolations, he talks about speaking to the better part of your friends, not through criticism, but through calling out that best part. And so
praising the good in them.
Yes.
Because
and saying,
when people point out the good in you, it makes you want to be more good, which is not correct grammar, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. And the same of, if you see your buddy, kind of being a little bit negative towards things, like maybe they're trying to do something really hard and they're focusing on the real negative parts of it, or they're focusing on the negative parts of their romantic partner or their parenting or whatever, you can nudge them a little, like, man, remind them of something positive and try to help them reframe it.
Yeah, and I'll say there's a podcast that I really love that my husband and I listen to. So the Gottman Institute is like a marriage counseling program. They're a couple that created this whole marriage counseling curriculum, and it's very famous and blah, blah, blah. But they have this podcast where like it's 5-minute episodes, and it's like a call to action for you and your spouse to try this practice, So like Michael and I will listen to like one a week, and we really try to focus on that thing that week. And one of the metaphors that they use, which I think is totally aligned to what we're talking about, is to think about our relationships as a bank account, and that if you're not depositing more than you're withdrawing, you're in a deficit and you're in debt. And it's when things get scary and anxious and, like panic sets in. Like if you're not making as much money as you're spending, that ain't gonna fly. And it's kind of like in this negative bias and positive bias switch, or like reframing that. It's like you have got to be depositing more of the positive reframe than the negative, because you're going to have negative. Like you can't get rid of it, but you've got to make sure you're balancing your books.
And as a preventative, like don't just put a bunch of positive stuff in your bank account because you took a deposit.
Yeah, a withdrawal.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Like don't deposit just because you withdraw. Like make sure you're
build
doing
it up.
Income.
Yes.
That's consistent.
Yes. so that when it happens, you have it and your partner, and it's making me think of Brene Brown's metaphor of like the marble jar friends.
Yeah.
She uses it for trust. Yeah, every time somebody does something, a little thing that you're like, I can trust them, and you put a marble in. I can trust them, I put a marble in. But what we tend to do because of our negative bias is if somebody breaks your trust, you just dump it out.
Whole jar.
See ya. Out of here.
Jar gone.
So hopefully throughout our lives, whether it's with your partner or with your friends or just out in the world, honestly, to build up this bank account of goodness in the world, we're all trying to put out positive things so that we're as a whole, as humanity, shifting our brains towards positive a little bit.
And I will tell you, like, so you guys know my career has been teaching high school English, and something that I notice so much in my students is when I really call out and glorify and praise the good social things that they do. I'm not just talking about academics, like when they do something even as small as like brighten up somebody's day or something like that, like whatever they're doing that is positive, and I really point it out and I really give them praise over it, I notice they want that again, and so they keep like it I don't know, it's like this good spiral up.
Yes.
And I just think it's like what you're saying about our friends, but it's also people you don't know. Like whenever you just see somebody doing something good out in the world and you recognize it and you give them that recognition and praise, it's going to make them want to do it more and again.
And to be aware as we go out into the world that we all do have this negative bias. So if you choose to do something harmful to someone, it's going to impact them a lot, and that we need to store up all these good things, but be aware if you choose to do something negative or your words being negative,
repercussions are much
they're
heavier.
deeper because we are all prone to overreact to these negative things. So let's all go out and try to be more careful and intentional with the way that we're treating people. If you do need to give someone criticism, because criticism is good, we all need it, Get to the point, say what you need to say, and then give them something positive too, It's not all black or white.
And maybe some more positive to balance out your one negative.
I know. Yeah, it's a really good reminder.
Yeah. So again, if this was something that you needed to hear, we're so glad to have this good conversation with you, dear friends, and share it with a dear friend of yours if they need to hear it. And again, if you want to watch us, you can see us on YouTube at Dear Friend, Podcast. And this is our 81st episode. And we're pumping them out every Monday, y'all.
We are. Thank you for following along. You can also watch us on Instagram, follow along with us at dearfriend.podcast, because they don't allow commas.
Yeah, they don't allow commas.
They don't. We're here at Fernware Recording. Thank you to Will Flato for just watching and listening and being supportive.
You're great.
And also the music that you hear at the beginning and end of each episode is from our band, Sister. You can look us up at sistertheband.com. Again, I'm Haley.
I'm Amanda. And we're Haley and Amanda. Thanks for listening, and live pretty, y'all. Bye.